Saint Augustine, commentary on Psalm 119, Ain. I have dealt judgment and righteousness. O give me not over unto mine oppressors. Verse 121. It is not wonderful that he should have dealt judgment and righteousness, since he had above prayed for a chaste fear from God, whereby to fix with nails his flesh, that is, his carnal lusts, which are wont to hinder our judgment from being right. But although in our customary speech judgment is either right or wrong, whence it is said unto men in the gospel, judge not according to the persons, but judge righteous judgment. John 7:24. Nevertheless, in this passage, judgment is used as though, if it were not righteous, it ought not to be called judgment. Otherwise, it would not be enough to say, I have dealt judgment, but it would be said, I have dealt righteous judgment. Whoso, therefore, in the chaste fear of God, has his flesh crucified, and corrupted by no carnal allurement, deals judgment and the work of righteousness, ought to pray that he may not be given up to his adversaries, that is, that he may not, through his dread of suffering evils, yield unto his adversaries to do evil. For he receives power of endurance, which guards him from being overcome with pain, from him from whom he receives the victory over lust, which prevents his being seduced by pleasure. Psalm 85 verse 2 and Psalm 62 verse 5. He next says, Take off your servant to that which is good, that the proud calumniate me not. Verse 122. They drive me on that I may fall into evil. Do you take me off to that which is good? They who rendered these words by the Latin calumnientur have followed a Greek expression not commonly used in Latin. Have the words, let not the proud calumniate me, the same force as, let them not succeed in calumniating me. To prefigure his cross, Moses, by the merciful command of God, raised aloft on a pole the image of a serpent in the desert, and the likeness of sinful flesh which must be crucified in Christ might be prefigured. John 3:14. By gazing upon this healing cross, we cast out all the poison of the scandals of the proud. The cross which the psalmist, intently looking upon, says, My eyes have failed for your salvation and for the words of your righteousness. Verse 123. For God made Christ himself to be sin for us on account of the likeness of sinful flesh, that we may be made the righteousness of God in him. Romans 7:3 and 2 Corinthians 5:21. For his utterance of the righteousness of God, he therefore says that his eyes have failed from gazing ardently and eagerly, while remembering human infirmity. He longs for divine grace in Christ. In connection with this, he goes on to say, O deal with your servant according to your loving mercy. Verse 124. Not according to my righteousness. And teach me, he says, your righteousnesses, those beyond doubt, whereby God renders men righteous, not they themselves. I am your servant, O grant me understanding, that I may know your testimonies. Verse 125. This petition must never be intermitted, for it suffices not to have received understanding and to have learnt the testimonies of God, unless it be evermore received and evermore in a manner quaffed from the fountain of eternal light. For the testimonies of God are the better, and the better known, the more understanding a man attains to. It is time, he says, for the Lord to lay his hand. Verse 126. For this is the reading of most copies, not as some have, O Lord. Now what is this, save the grace which was revealed in Christ at his own time? Of which season the apostle says, but when the fullness of time was come, God sent his Son. Galatians 4:4. But wherefore is it that seemingly anxious to show the Lord that it was time to lay to his hand, he has subjoined, they have scattered your law, as if it were the season for the Lord to act, because the proud scattered his law. For what does this mean? In the wickedness of transgression, they have not guarded its integrity. It was needful, therefore, that the law should be given to the proud and those presuming in the freedom of their own will, after a transgression of which whosoever were contrite and humbled might run no longer by the law, but by faith to aid in grace. When the law therefore was scattered, it was time that mercy should be sent through the only begotten Son of God. Therefore he says, I love your commandments above gold and topaz. Verse 127. Grace has this object, that the commandments which could not be fulfilled by fear may be fulfilled by love. Therefore they are above gold and topaz stones. For this is read in another psalm also, above gold and exceeding precious stones. Psalm 19 verse 10. For topaz is a stone considered very precious. But they're not understanding the hidden grace which was in the Old Testament, screened as it were by the veil. Exodus 34 verses 33 to 35 and 2 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 13 to 15. This was signified when they were unable to gaze upon the face of Moses, endeavored to obey the commandments of God for the sake of an earthly and carnal reward, but could not obey them because they did not love them but something else. Whence these were not the works of the willing, but rather the burdens of the unwilling. For when the commandments are loved for their own sake, above gold and exceeding precious stones, all earthly reward compared with the commandments themselves is vile, nor are any other goods of man comparable in any respect with those goods whereby man himself is made good. Therefore he says, was I made straight unto all your commandments. Verse 128. I was made straight, doubtless, because I loved them, and I clung by love to them which were straight, that I might also myself become straight. Then what he adds naturally follows, and every unrighteous way I utterly abhor. For how could it be that he who loved the straight could do aught save abhor an unrighteous way? For, as if he loved gold and precious stones, he would abhor all that might bring loss of such property. Thus, since he loved the commandments of God, he abhorred the path of iniquity as one of the most savage rocks in the sailor's track, whereon he must needs suffer shipwreck of things so precious. That this may not be his lot, he who sails on the wood of the cross, with the divine commandments as his freight, steers far from thence.